Sit here?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
We'll sit all time.
Right, today I'm going to ask the question, is iambic keying worth the effort to learn? Well, I just said, and there we go. If we go back to the early 1830s, the Industrial Revolution was coming along, and everybody was looking for a fast way to send messages other than Pony Express and the post and things like that. And several methods of telegraphy were developed. One of the first was the Wheatstone telegraph, not terribly practical. It consisted of needles with solenoids behind them, and you press the keyboard and the needles deflected and pointed to a letter. But it required 6-wire cable to do it, which was a bit difficult to do. And it never achieved a great commercial success. It wasn't until Samuel Morse invented the telegraph in 1835, but he did not invent the Morse code. That was his assistant, Alfred Vail, and he never seems to get enough credit for it. What he did was he went to counted the frequency of letters in the type box at the newspaper office in Morriston, New Jersey, and decided the most frequently occurring letters, E, T, A, I, O, and N, should have the shortest symbols, and the less frequently occurring letters should have longer symbols. Incidentally, although he invented the Morse code, it was the American Morse code, and it was Frederick Gurker who changed it to what we now call the International Morse code. Nevertheless, Vail should get credit for it. The original Morse telegraph looked like that. Here you had a wind up for a clockwork mechanism, and it pulled tape across a roller, and the solenoid here made indentations in the tape to represent dots and dashes. And at the end, the telegraphist took the piece of paper and decoded it back to letters. Well, it didn't take telegraphists long to realize that they didn't need any of that. They could just listen to it. And it eventually became a Morse sounder like this. And Morse keys. Again, it was Alfred Vail who invented the first Morse key. Notice there's no insulating knob. That's because the battery voltage was quite low in those days and they didn't need it. But it has all the essentials. This is a replica. You can actually buy it today. It cost you about €400. Kent Key makes it. And the original is in the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, but it's an exact replica. When we started keying spark transmitters, it became obvious we needed an insulating knob on the end because the voltages were significantly higher. And this is about the cheapest, most basic Morse key you can get. It's an MFJ 550. It either comes by itself or you get it on a Morse oscillator. And it consists of nothing more than a bent piece of steel and another bent piece of steel. And as I say, that's about it. You can't get more basic than that. If you want to go up market a bit, you can get the high mound key. Nice Japanese key, decent amount of weight to it. Take the cover off, and it looks like that. Notice the big screw holes because it's intended to be bolted to your operating desk. And underneath these screws are some balls. It's got a sort of ball race built in. And by adjusting the tension on these screws, you can alter the amount of friction on the horizontal pivot there. But nice key. On the other hand, you can put together a kit, the Kent key. This comes either with a wooden base, which was mine, or you can get a steel base to give it even more weight. Hello, you want to go somewhere? And because you have that, there is a problem. You have to have that as well. Okay. The Kent key comes as a kit. And you'll notice it's got a nice sealed ball race here. Doesn't really need a ball race, but hey, you might as well put it in. If you don't feel like assembling it yourself, you can get a similar key, the Zigo VK5, another nice sealed ball race, tension adjustment, and gap adjustment. And Morse code structure. I'm sure you're all familiar with this, but just to refresh your memory, consists of two elements, the dot, which is the fundamental element, and the dash. A dot is 1 unit of time. A dash is 3 dot units of time. Morse symbols comprise one or more elements, and the inter-element space is 1 dot time. The inter-symbol space is 3 dot times. Groups of symbols make words, and so the inter-word space is 7 dot times. Okay. Timing. The standard telegraph word is Paris, and this gives us 50 dot units of time for one word. How do we get it? For 14, 1 plus the space, 2 plus that, plus that, plus that, plus 3 at the end gives us 14. The S, we add 7 at the end of that to give us 12. You add that lot up, you get 50 dot units. So 20 words a minute is 60 milliseconds. I shall refer to this later because it really plays an important part when you deal with timing gates for automatic keyers. Okay. Automatic keying. Early telegraphists developed what they called a glass arm, a paralysis of the wrist from hours operating a straight key. We would call it carpal tunnel syndrome today. So, in 1902, Harold Martin developed a solution called the autoflex keyer. He used a paddle moving side to side. And who's that going to? He used a paddle moving side to side and a battery-powered interrupter to send automatic dots and dashes. And this is the only picture I can find of the autoflex. It was, by reputation, quite a difficult thing to get right. There's lots of adjustments here and here and here and here. But once it was adjusted, it apparently worked quite well. However, he soon realized that the complexity of a battery-powered interrupter and solenoids was unnecessary and could be achieved mechanically. And in 1905, he introduced the vibraplex key, called a bug key. It's called a bug key because the trademark was a lightning bug. And it looks like that. And in fact, I've got one here. They've acquired a bit of a reputation of being difficult to adjust. It consists, as you can see, of a paddle moved side to side. Push it that way to get automatic dots and that way to get manual dashes. Consists of a horizontal pendulum with weights on it. And this is a 1974 presentation key. Turns out that Vibraplex is still in business and they have complete records. And when I gave them the serial number of this, they were able to tell me it's a 1974 presentation key and they've still got spare parts for them, going all the way back to the first one. So if you want to get a Vibraplex key right, adjustments are critical. One of the most critical adjustments is this, getting the paddle, or the pendulum rather, to just touch the damper weight when it's in the 0 position, when it's not being moved at all. If you don't get that right, it'll never work properly. And this is done by adjusting it using these adjustments. Never mind this black bit. This is a modern add-on that allows you to connect a keying cable to it rather than attaching to the terminals. And what you have to do is slacken this adjustment, this one, and this one off, completely out of the way. Let the paddle come to a halt, and then very carefully adjust that until the paddle, the pendulum just touches. And I emphasize, just touch. No gap, no pushing, just touches the damper. The next step from there is to get the keying contact right. And for that, you really need to connect it to an oscillator. You move the paddle all the way over to the dot position, let it come to a rest, and then very carefully screw that in till you get a good contact, not a scratchy contact, and not pushing this contact either. That's why you need an oscillator to listen to it. Once you've got that adjustment and that one right, you can then get the dot gap right. Some people use a feeler gauge, some people use a couple of pieces of paper. The idea is that it must not be too close, otherwise you will not be able to impart enough kinetic energy to the paddle for it to send lots of dots. And it mustn't be too wide, otherwise you start smacking the paddle and the thing starts skating across the table. Then you can adjust the dash gap and the tensions for the dot and dash. And if it's correctly adjusted, like this one, you can get lots of dots out of it and manual dashes. Lots of dots. It's 25 words a minute. That's
mechanical?
That's mechanical.
How long does it do?
Sorry?
How long it will do if you keep it? That's enough energy. Just for mechanical.
Just mechanical. More dots than you will ever need when it's correctly adjusted. Then we get round to automatic keys. Now, back in the 1940s, there were indeed some vacuum tube automatic keyers, but they were never terribly successful. And I have to say, I have not managed to find a picture of one, so I can't show you what it looks like. It really had to wait until we got the solid state revolution so that transistorized keyers came about. And the first keyers used what is called the automatic mode. This is where you send automatic dots or automatic dashes. So you push a single paddle to the right for dots, single paddle to the left for dashes. And if I stick a single paddle into this, dots, dashes. This is this thing, American Morse equipment. It's a kit. Unfortunately, the contacts are only screw heads up there, so it's not terribly good. It works all right with that keyer, but some keyers are very fussy about the type of contact. It's not really a contact closure, and as a result you tend to get scratchy dots and scratchy dashes out of this thing if your keying circuitry doesn't really like it. If the keying circuitry's got a decent open circuit voltage, 5 volts or so, and the keying current is several milliamps, this will work quite well. But most modern CMOS keyers have open circuit voltages of about 3 volts and keying currents of a few microamps, and this doesn't work terribly well with those. Moving right along, we get to dual paddles. It didn't take the logic engineers to find out that, okay, we have 3 logic states. We have A, not B for dots, and B, not A for dashes. But what about A and B, where you squeeze the paddle together? Now you can get automatic dots and dashes. And this is a MFJ 564B. This is the tension spring. It's not adjustable. The keying contacts are adjustable here, but They're a bit spindly. And I'll come to contact bounce in a moment. The elephant in the room. So with a dual paddle key, if I plug this in, dots as before, dashes, or, as I say, you can go to a much more sophisticated dual paddle key, the Zigo VK6. This one has got nice precious metal contacts, nice paddles, decent locking for the screws, and a very ingenious tension adjustment. This brass knob has embedded in it a ring magnet, which is magnetized on the face. And there's a matching ring magnet there. So if you have the two north poles facing each other, they repel. So by screwing this in, you increase the repulsive force, which increases the tension without any springs. How about that? So, and then we get an automatic keyer, this one. This comes from the 1980s. It's 40 years old, and there's not a microprocessor in sight. Inside, it looks like that. All CMOS logic. And it offers either relay output keying, or you can't see it, but there's a transistor there, a high voltage transistor that allows you transistorized keying. Paddle adjustments here. You can't see it here, but inside there is a little Allen screw that moves against a spring and alters the paddle tension. And if you want to swap over for left-handed operation, you just swap these two contacts over. And I say, I'm amazed it still works. Here we are, 40 years later, and it still works. I had to fix it because the reed relay in this capsule was damaged, and I managed to get another one. Down at Niccolo Electronics, actually. I went in with the bits and I smiled and I said to the guy, I bet you haven't got one of these. And he smiled back and said, pulled out a drawer and he said, which one do you want? Aladdin's cave down there. Okay. Then we come to the modern equivalent, the Kanga keyer, which is a kit. There's not a lot in it. 2 AAA batteries, microprocessor, a CMOS relay, button, 3 resistors, a volume control, and 4 capacitors. All the intelligence, of course, is in the microprocessor. But it's got memory, and it's a perfectly suitable keyer. It'll key virtually anything because this CMOS solid-state relay is bidirectional, so it can key negative voltages as well as positive voltages, so key anything. So, comparison of the size of these two things. Contact bounce. Oh my, the elephant in the room. Modern microprocessors are so fast that contact bounce will be registered as a whole string of dots. So if you're writing the software for one of these things, as I have, then you really need to put in contact bounce suppression. Now I've chosen to illustrate it here with a particularly bad example. This is actually a power relay. And what I did was, it's a changeover relay. So you have a normally closed contact, a normally open contact, wire the two together and connect it to ground, and pull the armature up to plus 12 volts with a resistor. Connect the scope to the armature and to ground, and here we energize the relay, and note it takes nearly 10 milliseconds before anything happens. As I say, nearly 10 milliseconds before anything happens. And then suddenly the armature starts moving. So this goes up to plus 12 volts. And it accelerates across the contact gap, hits it, and starts bouncing. This highlighted section here is expanded on the bottom trace. So you can see what's happening. This is contact bounce. And I'm afraid that some keys, some paddle keys, suffer from contact bounce. So if you don't put it in and you find you need it, you'll start sending rubbish. So it's best to put it in. Even if you don't need it, it won't do any harm. But it does affect the timing gates. Timing becomes critical for this. So, contact bounce. Oh dear. All right. So what I did, we answer the question, is iambic keying worth all the effort to learn how to do it? So what I did was I counted the number of contact closure operations necessary to key the entire alphabet, the numbers, and the normal punctuation. With a straight key, you need 82 contact closures to send the alphabet. With a single paddle, automatic mode, you need 55. And using iambic mode wherever possible, 44. Punctuation, straight key, 83. Single paddle, 42. Iambic, 33. So it sounds like, yeah, it's worth doing. But we don't sit down and send the alphabet and punctuation all day. So what's it like with English text? As I say, with a straight key, you'd need a total of 165. With a single paddle, you'd need 97. And with an iambic paddle, only 77. So, sounds like a winner. So what's it like with straight text? So if we key the quick brown fox jumps over a lazy dog, with a straight key, it requires 100 contact closures. With a single paddle, 61. With an iambic paddle, 50. The case for iambic keying is made. Or is it? We don't send English text with CWQSOs. It's highly stylized, lots of abbreviations, Q codes, numerics. So does it work with a CWQSO? Well, all right. So supposing I start sending CQ, with a straight key, that takes 102 keystrokes. With a single paddle, it takes 62. And with an iambic paddle, 42. Okay, let's suppose that G3VJN comes back to me. I answer him from 5B4AIY. Good morning, old man. Your signal's 579. Name aid, QTH Keeley, KM64FU, ARKN. Straight key, 173. Single paddle, 104. Iambic paddle, 87. He sends something back to me, and I reply and say, all okay. Rig is an ICOM, power, hex beam, ARKN. Straight key, 176. Single paddle, 108. And iambic paddle, 85. And then we sign off, and that requires 99 for a straight key, 64 for a single paddle, or 50 for an iambic paddle. Add all that up. With a straight key, that QSO would take 550 keystrokes. For a single paddle, 338, only 62%. 264 for iambic paddle, only 48%. So, the case has certainly been made. If you're a CW operator and you're doing this, more than occasionally, then it's worth learning to use an iambic paddle, because it'll save you lots of keystrokes in the end.
And for iambic paddle, when you close two pads same time, it starts always from dot?
No.
Or it does, depending on which one you start?
Where are we? As I shall explain. Oh, come on, don't do that to me. There we go. So dots, dashes. If I squeeze the dot paddle first, di-da, 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 the dash paddle first. All right.
So, but you need to study for iambic.
It depends which one you close first.
Yes.
Yeah. So There's two modes. Iambic mode A, which was the original mode. If a squeeze operation is terminated, when the paddles are released, the keyer completes the last element, a dot or a dash, and then stops. Mode A. Mode B came about as a result in a bug in the firmware. And a bug is only a bug till you find a use for it, then it's a feature, an undocumented feature. In the case of mode B, when a squeeze operation is terminated, the keyer will send an additional opposite element to the last one. If you like that, consider what happens. Okay? If the last element was a dash, the keyer will send an additional dot. If the last element was a dot, it'll add a dash. So, in mode A, sending the letter A, squeeze. Squeeze the dot paddle, then the dash paddle, and release. The keyer will send did-ah and stop. In mode B, it'll send ah, because when you release, it'll add an additional dit at the end of it. So you have to decide which mode you prefer to operate in. This means you have to decide right at the outset which mode you prefer, because it will be extremely difficult, read impossible, to unlearn the muscle memory patterns you've acquired if you wish to change modes later. This is just like trying to learn to play the piano. I taught myself and I got it all wrong, and I can't unlearn it anymore. The same with this. If you start off in mode A and you say, no, I don't like that, I prefer mode B, heaven help you. You'll end up sending rubbish. In terms of keying efficiency, there's nothing to choose. Mode B is only useful for characters that end with an opposite element, but they mean more keystrokes for those that don't end with an opposite element. You pays your money, you takes your choice. So, then somebody added dot priority. Oh dear. This submode allows you to override the sending of alternating dots and dashes if you simultaneously just squeeze the paddles. It will override the iambic mode and send continuous dots. But you can send continuous dots merely by pressing the paddle. So why did they put it in? There's also dash priority, which overrides it and sends dashes. Unfortunately, this now seriously impacts timing sensitivity and requiring even stricter muscle memory patterns to use satisfactorily. In my opinion, it's best forgotten. Don't use it. Remember, you've got to suppress contact bounce. So if we start off at 20 words a minute, that's 60 milliseconds for a dot. You need about 10 milliseconds to make sure you're suppressing contact bounce. So there's another 50 milliseconds left to make a choice. If you're using dot priority, where in that 50 millisecond do you decide this is dot priority or iambic? There's a timing gate in there. And this gets worse as you go faster. That 10 milliseconds for contact bounce suppression stays no matter how fast you're sending, because you've got to suppress contact bounce. So the timing gates get narrower and narrower. And as I say, what I've found looking at CW hounds is as you get up to about 30 words a minute or more, they tend to default back to ultimatic keying rather than iambic keying, simply because the timing gates are so narrow. So it's as if you were using a single paddle. For a dedicated CW operator, iambic keying saves keystrokes compared to a straight key. I think we've proved that. It's important to decide at the outset whether you want to learn mode A or mode B, because you won't be able to unlearn it afterwards. And dot or dash priority, in my opinion, is a total waste of time. It just makes the timing gates that much narrower and much stricter muscle memory to acquire the right patterns to use them. So don't bother with it. And Any questions? No? If you really want to send automatically, you use something like this.
Okay. If I absolutely newbie in the CW, which mode I need to learn first?
Mode A.
Mode A.
Simpler.
And iambic is the best choice for the newbie.
Yeah. As long as you're going to be sending in around 20 to no more than 25 words a minute, full iambic mode with a dual paddle. But as you get faster, you will default more to automatic mode, so you might as well use a single paddle. How fast are you going to go? But if you want automatic sending, now you can do it in immediate mode, or you can do it in message mode. So you program a message in and then press the enter key.
It's for lazy operators.
Lazy operators. And there's memory in it as well. You program up to 12 memories with that. So that automates I'll turn it off. The transmission side. Another day I'll talk about automatic decoding of CW in both hardware and software. That is a much more difficult challenge. Okay.
Thanks so much.
Is this reasonably new, Adrian?
Yes.
I heard. Because
I got it.
Because where I am, I've had so many problems.
Plug it into this.
I've had so
into
many
the paddle.
problems with radio stations and all sorts of things coming through. Sometimes
It's set to 15 words a minute, so it's a bit slow.
I'm talking about